Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to those of you here in Merlin, Oregon. And welcome to those of you wherever you are in internet land. Welcome tonight to our talk with Guy Finley. This is Discovery Wednesday, where we will discover something new by working together on a topic, which I'll read in just a minute by Guy. If you're new here, Guy gives about a 60-minute talk. We'll take a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back for a Q&A with all of you. Those in the room could come up to the mic, and those who are out online, you can either write a question in, or if you're on GoToWebinar, you can talk directly to Guy. So make notes, and that's the purpose of this evening, is to work together to understand and clarify these ideas a little bit more. If you're in the room, once more, do turn off your cell phones at this time, and I think we'll get started. The title tonight is How to Use Any Negative Reaction to Give You a Fresh Start in Life. And I'm going to read the key lesson twice. Follow along. No one can be ready for a real moment of self-transformation, but we can be awakened and made aware of its imminent possibility and then agree or not to cooperate with that process. No one can be ready for a real moment of self-transformation, but we can be awakened and made aware of its imminent possibility and then agree or not to cooperate with that process.
Good evening, everyone. And welcome to all of you who are joining us. Wherever you are in the world, whatever day or time it is, I hope you're able to come and share the moment live with us, as it were, but if not, still good to be able to listen to and take what you can from the insights that we're going to look at together tonight. We're going to look at something that I dare say you may have never considered in your entire life. Of course, it'll be up to you to know whether or not that's a fact, but I have pretty good reason to believe that this is something that will strike you in such a way that if we're accurate with these arrows of insight that we intend to send out there, maybe something will strike you in such a way as to affect a real change in the way you see your life. In a few moments, we're going to work on a little list together briefly. It won't be too long because there's too much for us to look at. But I want to just touch on what we looked at a little bit on Sunday, where we talked about how, by and large, the only thing we know how to do with unwanted moments, with moments where we're filled with this summary resistance, the only thing we know how to do with those moments is to basically try and reject them, trusting that our response to that condition is a true one, and then listen to the part of ourselves that has responded in that negative way, telling us what we have to do to liberate ourselves from the moment we don't want. This is how we have spent our whole life. It's all we've ever seen. It's all you've ever known, is to look at a moment that isn't the one you want, and then somehow or other start to struggle with that circumstance because your mind has convinced you, as is true for all of humanity, that the conflict you have with the moment is because the condition is an unfair one, an unwanted one, never even beginning to consider the fact, as we looked at together, that there's a lot more going on in that moment when you feel that resistance and you start to struggle than you would imagine. And I believe that one of the main points was that that resistance that comes up in that moment that rules your life, the onset of it isn't yours. That what you think is your struggle in that moment is not your struggle, but something makes it your struggle. We'll look at this, you'll see, I trust. And the last part of that we talked was that we have been, as human beings, struggling and struggling and struggling to change everyone around us, maybe struggling in quotes to change ourselves, but certainly constantly working to do whatever we can to remediate the moment, get rid of the misery that's blamed on it, failing to see that after, say your age to yourself, I can still be taken over at the drop of a hat, dropped into some kind of reaction that convinces me that what I am looking at is fully responsible for what is ruining my life in that moment, and then enter again and again and again into another struggle, find others who will struggle with me over the same things, look for friends, get rid of foes. Not one of those things has changed you a bit. There is a shock, and a necessary one, that comes. And part of why I say this to you is so that you can be ready, prepared to see it. What happens to a man or a woman? And don't let it be on your deathbed, as it is for billions of human beings, who sees, what did I do? What did all my struggles get me? Someone sitting here by my bed that I don't have the energy to even entertain, let alone try to feel good because someone is weeping over me. You don't see it at all. All of this struggle, and what I've wound up with is a struggle on my deathbed to overcome the fear of being someone who wasted his life, wasted her life. See, this is the problem. I know it's a tough pill to swallow right at the get-go. I get it. But how many times are you going to struggle with fear? How many times are you going to struggle with anxiety? Struggle with resentment? Struggle with sudden fear that something's going to be taken? How many times will you struggle that way? And the real question isn't just how many times, but why don't I see that I'm struggling again with the same thing? It's dressed in a different set of clothes maybe. The circumstances may look slightly different to me, but it's exactly the same inwardly. The same, oh no, the same, what do I do? You don't want to go you don't want to quit this body in that fear, in that regret. I can tell you that for sure. So, with that in mind, the whole purpose of this talk, nice deep breath. What if it was possible for you, and it is, to at least begin realizing and then using every last one of those negative moments, every last one of those negative reactions. Do you have a lot of negative reactions? What if you could use every one of those negative reactions so that instead of reincarnating the consciousness responsible for the resistance, you use the negative reaction to die to that consciousness and to be reborn to a whole new set of positive possibilities in that same moment? What would that be worth to you? Do you understand? It's like, here's everything in life I don't want, and instead of not wanting anymore, I recognize that every last one of these instances has come to provide me with a possibility that I wouldn't even know was there if it weren't for the very negative reaction that I'm always trying to push away. Do you not try to push away everything that makes you negative? You're trying to push me away right now. Imagine, and one day you'll see it. And I think this is the nature of innocence. There is no moment that you are aware of that isn't a new beginning. The problem is we're not aware of our moments. we're aware of what we don't want or what we want from our moments. There's a big difference, isn't there? So we're going to start tonight by making a list. We're talking about, well, if I could use negative reactions to actually be reborn, meaning that to become part of this new moment, if I could use a negative reaction like that, that'd be spectacular. So we have to start where we don't really want to start, but we can do it together so everybody can see. Our list tonight is, and we can bring it up on the board, please. What are some of your most familiar negative states? Anybody have a problem? Do I have to list these? Do I have to prime the pump? Or are you already primed with the kind of pain you can help? And this is open to you out there. We're just looking at this casually. We're not judging ourselves. What are some of your most familiar negative states? Let's get started in the room. Dana. Defensiveness. I am a defensive person. Patricia. Boredom. I get bored. Roger. Anger. I am easily set off. John.
Sarcasm.
I am a fairly adept sarcastic wit. But sarcasm isn't the kind of, when I say what are your familiar negative states, sarcasm isn't really a familiar negative state. It is to hide a negative state. And there's a difference, John. Do you understand that? Yes. Terry. Resentment. Boom. Ellen. Depression. Dave. Uncertainty. Douglas.
Instant judgment of another.
A summary judgment of any condition that runs counter to what I want. Yes, Debbie. Blame. How many of you are masters at blame? Barbara, you you were going to say blame too? Oh my God. Unbelievable. How could there be two people having the same negative reaction? I'm looking over on the board. We've had nobody submit anything? Well, you know what? Maybe I'm not on the right place. I'm looking at the umbrella that I sent you. Is that not the right?
Yeah, I've sent you like 10.
Well, I've got to get to it. That's not there.
I can read some to you.
Yeah, Kate, please, because they're not coming up and I want them to.
Jill says jealousy.
Jealousy.
Joan says worry.
Worry.
Roy says loneliness.
Loneliness.
Jane says self-condemnation.
Self-condemnation.
Claudia, anxiousness.
Anxiousness.
Gino says I could lose all I'd worked for.
I didn't hear that.
I could lose all I'd worked for.
Fear of loss.
Yeah, and Carl says cynicism.
Cynicism. Again, that's not a negative state per se. It's what we do to ensure that whatever we're negative about, we have a good reason for. But so a dozen or two familiar negative states. Now, is there anybody, like I could ask in the room, that doesn't have some relationship with one of these negative states? Or we have some relationship with all of them? Yes or no? All right, so this is the simple part of the class. We've proven to ourselves that there is a struggle, and most of our struggles are highlighted by these reactions that bring up these negative states. And we named all these negative states, and there's probably a few dozen more, but we don't need to get into those. We just need to see, if we can, that they're fairly common to this consciousness that we call our own. Agreed? Yes. All right. Now here's where we start doing a little digging. And I'll ask you again. So here I am, and I'm fairly prone to these painful negative states. What gives birth to these negative states? Because something has to give birth to them. What is it that gives birth to any one of these things that we just listed on the board? Chris, what gives birth to them?
Resistance.
We'll ring the, wait a minute. Ring the bell. Yes, that's it. No, that's it. Resistance is the answer that sits behind every negative state. you can't have a negative reaction that isn't preceded by something in you that meets something that touches it and goes, no, and it has resistance to the event or the condition blamed for the reaction. Everybody still understand all that? So this resistance is to identification. And identification is what? Anything that challenges who or what it is that I am presently imagine myself to be. So resistance comes followed by a negative reaction when anything challenges what I am holding on to as being necessary and true for myself. Still, everybody following me? Let's bring up the second key lesson. We're building a case here. It is impossible to move past any unwanted experience in life without transcending the unconscious nature that wants us to struggle with it. That is not the second key lesson.
Sorry, that's my fault.
That's from Sunday's class. It's all right. It's still a good key lesson, but it's not the one we're looking for. There we go. Second key lesson. Conditions don't create the pain we blame them for. They reveal the level of consciousness that only knows how to negatively react to them. Please read it with me. Conditions, you and I see conditions, don't we, as being responsible for the pain we're in. What we've already seen is that conditions don't create the pain we blame them for, but what those conditions do is reveal a level of consciousness that I've come into the moment with that only knows how to react negatively to anything that upsets its apple cart, that challenges what it assumes is true and right and good. That's what these moments are about. Look at this with me. There can be absolutely no resistance to an unwanted moment that we become identified with unless, and see it with me because we're looking at this, a chain of events. What happens the moment I have this resistance, sudden resistance, negative reaction? What is it that comes on the heels of that negative reaction? This is your life we're talking about. No negative reaction appears without what we said, that which it blames the pain on. But in order to blame the pain, it has to name the pain it blames. In order to name the pain it blames, it has to name that pain as the culprit. So that resistance, reaction, and then something begins to talk to us and tell us the name of whatever it is that is to be blamed for my suffering in that moment. Now, this is really important. Every name that this mind gives to a condition, the name is already conditioned. Every name that your mind gives to an unwanted moment is already conditioned. That means the name already has in it all the justification and the reasons for why you are experiencing what you are experiencing. The name is the past. The past is the knowledge of an event prior. The knowledge of the event prior, bringing that name in, relieves me of any responsibility of trying to understand whatever happened to me, because now I know the name of it, and the name is filled with the pain. The name itself is filled with the pain. You don't know it. You don't know that about any name that you give anything. If I were to say sex, the minute you hear the word sex, each and every person in the room has a specific reaction to that name based on their past experience and conditioning with that word. Every person. Addiction. Doesn't matter the word, whatever it is that this brain pumps out in the moment of that reaction to explain to you why you feel that way is inherent in the name given to you in that moment. Can you see that how you quickly something is named when you have an unwanted moment? Doesn't it? And then you think to yourself that the name being given to this is separate from myself who's experiencing this. When the name and the experience are a singularity. Can that get through to you? The name you give is the experience you get. The name you give is the experience you get. But when I give the name and I get the experience, this mind blames the condition for the experience instead of seeing it's experiencing the conditioned content of itself in that same moment. You following me? I ask you as much for the people out there. So this name is already conditioned. And more important than that, and I don't know to what extent you have tried, isn't it just so amazing that the smallest thing, the way someone looks at you, the tone of a voice, an attitude, someone on the street, anything can just bring out of you the name, the judgment, the summary reaction that is negative, and that then as that negative reaction comes up, it has seen the name of what causes it, and now it knows who its enemy is. It knows what it has to do, has to get away from, has to change. And it's all, this is what's so hard to understand, it's already sitting down inside the dark of this unconscious nature. Every name that you will ever give that blames anyone or anything is already residing in this unconscious nature, having been formulated and stuffed down there so that it waits like an eel in a cave for a moment to come along, and out will come that resistance. Again, the condition doesn't create the resistance, it reveals the consciousness in which the latent possibility of that reaction is waiting. And we don't know anything about it. We don't know what to do in those moments other than what? Start talking to ourselves about it, have more reactions, and go through more associations, none of which change anything. Nice deep breath. Big transition, if you're following me. So that everything we know about these moments that are more or less, in quotes, covered by this unconscious resistance is tantamount to being in a box of binary reactions. In a box of do you ever feel captured, limited? Like, what do I do? Where do I go? And when you're caught up like that, what's the mind doing? It is searching the content of itself, its knowledge, its experience. It's searching all of that in order to deal with what triggered that same consciousness into that moment where it goes looking. So it's looking inside the box of thoughts and feelings for a way to transcend the thoughts and feelings, the experience of which it doesn't want. Please? I want you to have that picture in your mind. Every time you have a negative reaction, without exception, there is an instantaneous vocalization, emanation of certain feelings, and every last one of them is searching and looking around for a way to reconcile whatever that pain may be. And the only place it has to look is in the same level of consciousness that created it. That's a box, isn't it? You've heard the expression, think outside the box. What is this box? What is the actual nature of this box? I'm hoping that you're following me, that you can see, you know what, I'm kind of boxed in here. I watch television, I'm kind of boxed in. I hear this, I'm boxed in. I look at you, I'm boxed in. I'm a box with arms and legs and a bag over my head. I'm boxed in by my bitterness. I'm boxed in by, go through all of the negative states we just put on the list. I am boxed into a relationship with that state when it appears. And then I look inside the box for a way to get outside the box. And the proof that it's a useless struggle is that I've never gotten outside the box of having the same resistance and reactions. They just go round and round and round, because that's all that can happen inside of an unconscious nature that sees unwanted moments as a threat, and the threat is always to some image it's attached to and identified with. And so the only thing it can do when it runs into anything that challenges it is to look for a way to get over the challenge. And where does it find the solutions to the suffering of what's been challenged? The consciousness that was challenged. But it doesn't see that, does it? Transition. If you've understood this, dear God, I'm writing this letter to you from inside a box. I've done everything I can. I've struggled mightily to get myself out of this box, but not a day goes by that I don't have the same reactions, go through the same iteration of thoughts and feelings, hate myself, judge others, love myself for maybe getting past it because I have a solution, only to find out I'm right back where I started from again and again and again. How am I going to get out of this box? How am I going to get out of this box? Now, it's one of those immense paradoxes of spiritual life. I'll touch on it, and then I'm going to give you some ways to see this. There's only one way to get outside of the box, and that is to realize that you've never been inside of it. That's what's outside the box, is there's no you to be captured. You're captured by the conditioning of a mind, of a consciousness, of humanity's nature that you were born into in your time, whatever that may have been, and brought to believe that everything that isn't part of what I have identified with is to be struggled with. Because the struggle proves the value of what I'm identified with, instead of seeing the struggle proves that you're a victim of what you're identified with. And there's quite a difference, isn't there? Freedom can't be found inside the box. Next point. Does it matter what size box it is? Because some of us live in a big box, meaning I have more alternatives than other people. Still a box. How do you know it's still a box? Because they suffer just like you do. And they actually suffer over the same things. It's just that there seem to be bigger things. It's a phenomena of human consciousness that if I believe that if I can just get really big things to worry about, it proves what a big person I am. No, it proves what a big box you live in, that you believe if you can add another wing to your box, somehow or other you're going to be free. And that's all thought does, just builds another box. How, if we understand this, are we going to get outside the box? You ready? We're leading all of that is to this. Nice deep breath. We need some other kind of knowledge, a new way to see and think about the pain of this resistance that, yes or no, we're conditioned to believe that this resistance must be conquered at all cost. I have to overcome this moment. So I look at resistance as a kind of ally to me that points to where my enemies are. And once I know what my enemies are, this resistance then helps me define a new reality in order to get past the problem. You ready? I'm going to show you how it's possible. I can't do it for you. Imagine a world where you begin to understand, without having to take thought about it at all, that the resistance you don't want is actually a friendly force. The resistance you don't want is actually a friendly force. Do you look at the resistance that you have to moments? Do you see anything friendly about those moments? And when all you can see about the moment is what you don't want, you can begin to understand that the only reason you have that reaction, that you don't want that, is because you're identified with something challenged by it, and you're in the box. Instantaneously returned into the box, actually never left it, because the only way I know how to look at any given moment that is not the way I want it to be is through the eyes of, this is my enemy, this is a problem, this pain, I've got to know what to do about it. What if all reactions, big transition now, if you can. Even my own reaction to what looks like your disinterest in what I'm talking about. What if every last one of these reactions in the moment of their appearance is part of a process of giving birth to something new? What if every moment of resistance can be recognized as an integral part of the birth of something new, the birth of a new creation? I don't know how much you can put together in your mind. Right now, every moment of resistance for us is the reincarnation of that consciousness that doesn't want anything to do with the moment. And I'm trying to get you to understand this metanoia, this possibility of being able to turn around. And maybe I can't deal with it. I don't know what to do with it yet, but I can beginning to realize, you know what? There's nothing that comes into creation that doesn't come into creation through some form of resistance to something acting on it. Everything that's born is born with resistance as one of the midwives. Everything. You can't look out in the world and see anything in the world, in nature, that isn't drawn together, something active and something passive, drawn together for the purpose of some unfinished business of that particular moment of life. So that life is never not bringing about a grand expression of a relationship between celestial and planetary forces. I don't care what you call them. So that everything that's brought together, here comes this, here, it meets the past, if we talked about this, suddenly this thing that's sitting there in the dark, unaware of anything about itself and knows nothing about itself, suddenly something touches it, and suddenly there's an awareness of itself that wasn't there before. So what has stirred it into, listen, it stirs it by an initial act of resistance that passivity can't do anything other than resist. That's all it can do. In creation, not one creature that is brought into existence, let alone taken out of it, does so until something comes in and begins to stir it and stir the possibilities in it. And every possibility that is stirred in every creation is, in effect, the rebirth of that creation in that moment, because it becomes something new as it resists the very thing that creates that awareness. But for us, resistance is reincarnation and reincarnation and reincarnation. Just a return to the old same treadmill. The exact same thoughts and feelings, the exact same, I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to. That's all that's there. The reincarnation of a consciousness that is made uncomfortable with itself anytime something stirs it and brings up the content that is sitting down in there, listen to me, waiting to be reborn. Waiting to be made new. Again, I'll slow it down. Is there anything in creation that isn't waiting to be made new? Is there? You don't have to be an Einstein to see it. Every blade of grass, every leaf, every duck, every dog, every deer, every turkey, it doesn't matter what it is. Nothing is not being acted on constantly, and in the constant activity on the nature that they are in that moment, that nature is stirred to become something new. When I was thinking about this, I thought, well, I wonder if it's possible to realize that in this moment we're describing, there is, in fact, a kind of reunification taking place between different levels of being. So what does that mean, a reunification? Here, is there not an intersection, simply put, of the sun and the earth? Is there not an intersection? Is anything brought into creation on this planet that isn't the result of the activity of the sun on this planet? Whether it's given life or its life is taken from it. It's still a reconciling system, isn't it? So if that's true, then it has to be true for you. But we're never present to the moment of rebirth. Christ, would that this cup would pass from my lips. Nevertheless, thy will be done. Would that I don't have to be the one that is about to be reborn. Otherwise, why would he say that? Why would any man or woman who has any understanding at all look at a moment that comes in and you don't feel good, people are a problem, you've got all this stuff going on, you don't know what to do, and all there is just this giant resistance to life. And every bit of the resistance is validated by the consciousness that is disturbed. What I'm trying to get across to you is that this moment where this consciousness is disturbed is part of a divine act. And that the divine act is to bring about in that consciousness a relationship, a reunification. It's karmic. The whole thing is celestially karmic. Why? Because I got stuff in me. How many of you have stuff in you don't know anything about? Yes or no? Yes. And would you call it good stuff if it can lash out and bite somebody? Would you call it good stuff if it turns into a dark cloud that swallows you up and everyone else up? Would you call it good stuff if it can draw you into some kind of despair or angry state? Is that good stuff? Well, how do you think that ever gets out and becomes something new? It can't, as long as when that nature is brought into an awareness of itself, that nature summarily resists that moment and names it so that it can claim control over it, instead of recognizing this moment is a moment that has come to reunite, to finish the business that I'm here to be a part of. So let's look at it. How many of you, or maybe I shouldn't ask that. How many of you liked weddings? Weddings? Yeah. Pretty much everybody likes weddings. My wife said cake. That's fine. You're invited to a perpetual wedding. A perpetual wedding. Only the wedding is taking place in a world that these eyes can't see and these ears can't hear and this body can't touch. The wedding is the endless intersection and transaction between what is never not touching you and what is never not being touched. What is ceaselessly active and ceaselessly passive to that relationship. And where something is ceaselessly touching, ceaselessly acting, there is inherent in the passive part of us a resistance to it. You can't escape the resistance to it, and you're not intended to escape the resistance to life. You're intended to realize that the resistance is part of the wedding ceremony within you. The resistance belongs, if you want to use these words, it belongs to the groom. Belongs to the part of you that is waiting to be reconciled back into the wholeness of that moment. You don't see it because we're just so used to constantly fighting with life. How will I ever know the holiness, the wholeness of this life? If every time something comes along that I don't want, I summarily resist it instead of recognizing that that moment has brought together not just all that I have been formed into, not just this personality, but all the forces that form this personality over time. The whole of human consciousness. You are a microcosm of the whole of human consciousness. A microcosm of it. That means that you as a human being are one tiny bit of the whole of human consciousness, all of which sits outside of grace, all of which is not reconciled to the divine, but rather has imagined what divinity is and then creates kingdoms in its own image that every time they're threatened proves to that man or woman that they somehow know what's right and good. I'm trying to get you to see a bigger picture, and I don't want to be, I want it to be accessible. I want you to understand this. But the difficulty of the communication here is that all I know when a moment comes that I don't want is I don't want it. All I know is an instantaneous resistance to it. It never dawns on me that that resistance is part of a much, much bigger possibility. And the possibility is that instead of this little personal reaction that I have to what you've said or done, I can take part in an impersonal relationship, this reunification of something that has been waiting. I'm sitting here, I have all of humanity in me. I have all of its anger, all of its hatred, all of its violence, all of its darkness, all of its corruption. All of that is in this human consciousness. And it's not your consciousness, it's not my consciousness, it is human consciousness, and everything is in it. And because everything that's in it that sits in the dark is by its very nature not completed by the light, then always is acting on it a kind of light, a kind of activity to bring it into an awareness of itself so there can be a reconciliation between the divine mind and human consciousness, so that something can be born inside of this consciousness that is never going to know itself unless it begins to lay down its resistance, unless it begins to drink from the cup it doesn't want in the moment the cup is offered. I'm speaking to you about possibilities. It doesn't matter how far out it seems to you if you can't grasp what I'm saying. You should begin to at least have some concept of the fact, well, of course it's true. Imagine what would happen if that tree outside or that grapevine, if that blade of, imagine what if all it said was no, and then it tried to figure out what to do in order to grow and fulfill its potential. Nothing would grow and nothing would fulfill its potential, would it? Because it would be looking to the content of itself, how to become something bigger and better, and all it would become is a corrupted version of its own possibilities. That's all it could become of it. That's what's happened to human beings. We become a corrupted version of what a human being is intended to be, because every moment that comes along that's intended to create this union, this reunification, it's summarily rejected. So that instead of me being reborn through a new understanding of myself, because the self that I was is no longer the self that I was the moment before. I see it. Oh, something had been born. Wait a minute, Guy, yeah, I saw something born, but I didn't like what was born. Who didn't like what was revealed? Who didn't like seeing the truth of yourself? And the clearer that becomes to you, the more you become a willing participant in everything that I'm talking to you about this evening. Which is that every one of these moments, and think about them. Can you for a split second, I don't know if you can or not, can you see how many moments in every given day you go, no, 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 yes or no, no. Oh God, here they, look, he's coming. Oh God, the phone. Oh God, this. Oh God, that. Oh God, oh God, oh God. You're created to be present at the wedding. But not just present at the wedding like a guest, but present at the wedding that takes place when that which was in the dark is illuminated And in its illumination, the revelation of itself becomes crystal clear. And you stand there as not just bride and groom if you want, but the new birth that's come out of it. Don't make it bigger than, don't try to make it big, this idea of rebirth. Every moment that you see something new about yourself that you didn't see before, call it light or dark, joyous or sad, it makes no difference. Every last moment where suddenly there is a revelation and a subsequent realization of something that you didn't know about yourself, every last one of those moments is the rebirth. Because the consciousness was changed. It didn't change itself, didn't try to control itself, didn't try to control life. It recognized its place. I suppose I should ask, are you understanding me?
Yes.
So to use words because it's inevitable, well, so how does all that happen? How does that take place? First, you have to understand our proclivity is always to try and prove ourselves. That's our proclivity. Try to prove I understand, prove I know what to do, prove you're wrong, prove I'm right. You must learn to recognize these moments you don't want as evidence that there's something in you that wants to prove it knows what is right. And the reason that you're fighting with the moment is because it's saying, I don't think it is. I don't think you understand. So we try to prove that we understand. When the real task is not to succeed as imagined, let alone identified with, when suddenly, let's go back, feeling boxed in. Here's this negative reaction, I'm boxed in. Now you have been given some understanding about the nature of this resistance. Can any of you reach far enough to recognize, well, maybe this moment of resistance is not the reappearance of a condition that I don't want. Maybe this resistance is an invitation to understand why it has appeared again the way it has. Do you understand that difference? So that's a turning around. That's a way in which the mind can begin to recognize that the pain of this initial resistance, if I can be present to it, that in the pain of the initial resistance is endless possibility. In the end of, in the big moment of that pain, we're boxed in, are we not, by our own reactions to it? Now, if you know that much, at least you can begin to say, well, I wonder is there, you would think it would come to, is there any other possibility in this moment with this pain? Does this resistance I'm feeling actually have any other possibilities in it other than me just reliving it again, rejecting it one more time, and then getting to do it again? Struggle uselessly. Don't you see how stunning this is? No mind, no human being thinks, I wonder if, not the old crisis, the opportunity in crisis, although that's not far away in the true teachings in the East. But I've never in my life looked at this moment that I don't want as anything other than the proof that something has set itself against me and that life shouldn't be that. That's the only way I know how to look at it. And that's the useless struggle. And then one day I've struggled uselessly for 10,000 years. And suddenly here comes that resistance. And instead of being rolled up into a little box and shoved in a corner, the mind says, wait a minute. I wonder if there's anything else that this resistance has come to help do. How about just that? The resistance has come to help me, not hurt me. Tell me that wouldn't be a sea change, just to even consider that in the moment. This resistance, I'm out struggling with my golf game. I'm at work with people that I think are toxic. I'm sitting at home and I'm toxic myself. All of that's going on, and there's just more and more resistance. I don't want to go through this. I don't want to. And then in a moment, you go, wait a minute. What if in the energy of this resistance, what if it's just part of a whole I don't see? What if the resistance belongs to something holy? Because that's what I'm trying to get across to you. That this nature that acts on what is passive produces in their union a sudden moment of resistance, and that resistance, if understood properly, is a revelation of the consciousness that we aren't aware of the moment for. So the new possibilities in resistance. If nothing else, would you at least try? How many of you at least have enough understanding of what I said to attempt, when the next time that this resistance comes up, to at least say to yourself, wait a minute, can I slide a silent question in there amongst the usual suspects? Can I slide? Okay, all right. What have you come to reveal to me, to teach me about myself that I would never be able to see, let alone realize if it weren't for your stirring touch? Wouldn't that turn everything around for a moment? Give you a completely different way to look at all of these moments that you don't want to look at all? What other choices can I make in this moment that I don't want, other than listen to something tell me why I don't want it? Is there something, I know it's hard for you. Is there actually something else for me to want besides what my mind tells me I need to get rid of what I don't want? Can I want something new in the very moment where it seems everything's just being repeated to me? Because if I can, there exists in that exact same moment the possibility. Here, I was recently told that I need to strengthen a certain part of my body. A doctor told me. I said, but I play golf. She says, that's not going to strengthen what you need to strengthen. Now, why don't we want to strengthen parts of ourselves that we're not used to strengthening? Because it's bloody uncomfortable, that's why. My body has found a certain homeostasis, a balance, in quotes, as imbalanced as it may be, depending on the person. And in order to strengthen that part, I'm going to have to meet the limitations of that part. Now, you can't meet the limitation of a part without that part resisting everything that's acting on it. That's what it does. When you go to a gym, you are strengthened through resistance. That's how you strengthen the body, is through resistance. And if you can see that the body at that scale is strengthened through resistance, you can see that a tree is strengthened by the wind that makes it move, and that the wind is the exercise partner of the tree, yes or no? Yes. Then why wouldn't the moment I don't want be my exercise partner? Because it's bringing up resistance in me I didn't even know was there. And if I can begin to recognize that the resistance that's rising up is because something has come along as a friend to say, this part needs strengthening, this part needs revelation. Do your part when I'm doing this with you, and you'll be able not only to part ways with that weakness, but it'll be turned into something more perfected because you're willing to let it do that for you. I'm trying to give you different ways to look at this moment that you don't want in your life. Because you wake up and you go to bed at night, you're living moments you don't want. You wake up in the morning, you're living moments you don't want. Someone says something, you watch, it's a moment I don't want. All of that can become grist for the mill. All of it. And you mustn't try, in quotes, to succeed with what I'm talking about. What you must do is be willing to see how frequently and how quickly you just remand yourself over to what resistance tells you the only choices you have. And in that moment, if you can just come awake, you realize, wait a minute, when I'm identified with resistance, I'm in a box. I'm in a box. The minute I'm identified with resistance, I'm in a box. Yes or no? Do you want to live in a box? How do you get out? begins with not going in. Begins with understanding the nature of the box maker, so that increasingly you can have moments where this is our problem. I don't want pain. I don't want the pain of you. I don't want the pain of them. I don't want the pain of over there. I don't want the pain of behind me, my path. I don't want the pain. So anything that stirs any part of me that has this habitual relationship with pain, anything that stirs the pain is seen as an enemy to me. And I'm trying to get you to see that whatever is stirring what is passive, inseparable from the pain of your conditioning, that whatever is stirring that has come and said, let's go exercise. Let's go work out and see what it is that you can learn about this nature instead of letting this nature burn you as it always does every time you reject the moment. You got it? Let's take a break. We'll come back and have our dialogue.
Welcome back, everyone. We're going to get started with our Q&A with Guy right now. But before we do, I just want to give a reminder to all of you out there that all these free online talks are sponsored by the nonprofit Life of Learning Foundation here in Southern Oregon, where Guy is the director. And always know that we appreciate all donations that come. Many of you are already giving regularly, and it helps to keep this work going. But if you'd like to help us, you can please know that every donation you make, no matter the size, helps us reach out around the world and help others with these really life-healing teachings. And at any time you'd like, you can go to guyfinley.org/donate, and you can go onto that page. And also, you can go on that anytime, and there's other ways that you can help the foundation that also don't cost you anything. So if you haven't been to that page, go there and check it out, and that will help the foundation here. Also, I just want to mention that tonight is Wednesday, so there's a Friday night study group. That study group will be studying last Sunday's talk. If you have never been to a study group, do come to that. I think you will get a reminder again, like for all these classes, if you're on tonight, you're on the list. And it's at 7 p.m. Pacific time, and just runs for an hour. We have student-led talks, and they will give their impressions of that talk, and then you have a chance to work between now and then on that as well. So utilize that, and then every Saturday, 8 a.m. Pacific, is Guy's Insight Timer, and then Sunday class, as you can see online. All of those are right in front of you. Make note of that, and this is ongoing, so that's why it's called Life of Learning. It's ongoing. So I think that's enough of that announcement. I'm going to get rid of that. And then, Guy, do you have anything you want to say before we get started?
Nope.
Okay. So now's the time, if you're on GoToWebinar, to raise your hand. I see one hand up. Just click on the little hand icon, and that'll bring you into the queue. We have one hand up, and I see 2 questions, I think is what it is.
Yeah, I'll send you the one at a time.
Just one? Okay, good. Kate knows me. I get too confused if she gives me 2. But let's go ahead and get started with Jill. She's first in the queue. All right.
Okay, hi.
Hi, Jill.
Hi, Guy. I just a couple things. I really like this talk. So a couple things, when you said the resistance I don't want, I'm thinking that if I respond differently, if I'm aware of the resistance, I'm not sure about this, but I'm thinking that then the resistance becomes passive. And then if the resistance is a friendly force, you said it's part of a process of the birth of something new, an awareness. If I'm in the present, I'm thinking that becomes like an active force. And then there's a reunification, celestial, karmic, maybe kind of a neutralizing force that I'm a part of.
Jill, get rid of all that and just work to see it.
Okay.
When I'm teaching, I have to find forms that are somewhat familiar in order to bring the mind and heart into an alignment with what's being presented. But after that's happened, the task is not to, it would be like going to a restaurant and bringing your printer with you and printing out the menu and then taking it home without eating it at the restaurant.
Okay.
Yeah, just the task. See, the thing is, Jill, everybody, what do I have to do just to have a little more light in my life? Everything's about that. I can't have a little more light in my life if my mind points to something and says, look at that and see it by my light. And then I look at what my mind points to and it says, see that? I go, yes, I see that. Now do this. And I'm in the dark, not knowing I'm in the dark. To be able to see the mind do what it does is the light that you need. And that which sees the mind doesn't take part in what it sees by thinking about it. Not by giving it names, not by calling out what it is. Just by the simple act of, you know what, I get negative, like that in these circumstances. I've struggled all of these years to try to save myself, get rid of this pain, and I can see that I'm still in the exact same place. Okay, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to understand that. If I understand that, Jill, then anything that tempts me to move into the familiar relationship that I always look to reconcile that moment, I simply don't do it. It's not a discipline, it's not a practice, I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm just not going to cooperate with what has been putting me in a box. And the more I don't cooperate with this box nature, the more evident, the more light I have to see the box nature with. And the more I see the box nature, the more I understand I can't do that. I want to go along. How many of you like to kind of just, what's the word I want? Seethe slowly along. Seethe slowly along. Just quietly think about something that bothers you, and then keep thinking about what bothers you. Yeah, well, see, that's the box. And you believe that thinking about what's bothering you is going to one day release you from the box. You're building the box. You're thickening the walls of the box every time you think about what's wrong with you or what's wrong with everyone else. See all that, you're done with the box, and suddenly you're outside the box. And listen to this, Jill, and everybody else. And I'm as uncomfortable as a human being can be outside the box. And then you stay in that discomfort so that you voluntarily suffer the consciousness that only knows how to review itself through the content of itself, instead of letting that old content provide another cage, another box that you can get into and put a bow on it and call your life. You get me, Joe?
Okay, but no, I mean, I get you, but I guess I was just thinking about when you said something in a talk that I was listening to that said, bring the understanding into the moment. And I guess that was...
Jill, the understanding that you need to bring in the moment is not in thought. It isn't something that you know in advance of that moment. It's in that moment you realize what I need now is to be as aware as I can of the entire box, of all the content, everything in play. That's bringing new understanding into the moment. And that new understanding, Jill, is the awareness that that very moment has produced that you're now looking at. It's a singularity. That's what we're after. Work, keep working. On we go, Doug.
Hi, my name is Leah. So what you were just saying to Jill about it's not in thought goes so much along with this whole impression I had. It's the reason these classes and hearing the same things over and over are so important.
Yes.
Because until it has to be something that you just know without thought, just like you brush your teeth without thought. You just do it because you've done it so much, and listening to these same concepts over and over allow that to happen. So I had, you started the talk with, we are not aware of our moments. We're aware of what I want and don't want in the moment. So I had a perfect example to this whole talk today. I'm speaking with my dad, and I was suggesting a plan to get together with my brother and I, and I knew he was going to be thrilled with this great idea. And I suggested the idea, and he shut it down. And this has been a theme. It's seeing this theme. And then Leah is rejected by Dad. And over the years, there's been this theme of this whole movement that happens. Well, it happened, and I could feel the initial, there he goes again, but I didn't get in the box. I saw it, and I saw where Leah wanted to go with it. You know, he doesn't love me as much as he loves XYZ, or all these, you know, spiraling of sad thoughts that Leah would have. It stopped, but not only did I not point the finger at him for what he's doing wrong to his daughter, it was Leah seeing where she takes a situation and
can't wait to build a box out of it.
yes, yeah, and yeah. So it was a great, just full moment, but to Jill's point, it wasn't in thought. It just happened. Because you feel that initial, I can't remember what you called it, well, obviously the binary reactions, but the pain of the initial resistance. It's that first pain, and when you keep listening to the classes and participating, you just start to notice there's a pain. Wait a second. New relationship needs to happen because there's that thing.
Exactly.
So well said, right? That thing.
We have a question from Debbie, and she asks, do you have that in front of me there? Okay. I know now not to resist but allow. It's how to take action to override this gut feeling of being scared, even when I know the outcome of taking action would allow me to feel better. How to get myself to take the action. Any thoughts?
Well, she's saying, how do I not take action? That's what she's asking. How do I not take action? Don't take action. But then she says, but I understand that, but the fear wants to push me to take action, because the fear tells me if I don't take action, then something terrible is going to happen to me. Now, if you're there in the whole thing instead of boxed in, you realize, well, what worse can happen to me than to live with fear telling me every day what actions to take and not take? What could be worse than that? But see, it's not an intellectual process. What did I see just recently? I don't know. I don't know where. But some scientist was doing some research, and he was able to prove that it hurts human beings to think about themselves. He's able to measure the pain in the brain when people start thinking about themselves. Now so now they'll prescribe a drug. Well, that's what'll happen. I've got this evidence, and here's the new drug. We already have as many drugs as you could possibly have, but this will be non-habit forming. Do you understand? There's no such thing as a non-habit forming drug. Because if you have to take it, it belongs to something inside of you that believes without that there's a problem. But back to the point, Debbie's asking, all of you want to know the same thing. That's why we have to have these classes. That's what Leah was alluding to. When the pain appears, I automatically go into the box the pain comes from. That's what I do. And I go into the box hoping that I'll find a solution to the pain that came out of the box. And if you see that, you don't go, you go, you know what? I don't know what's going to happen to me, but I swear to God, I'm not going in the box. And then you're going to go in the box. And they're going to be stunned. How could I go in the box? I know not to go in the box. And then you get to see, doesn't matter what you say you know, what matters is your awareness in that moment that this fear that I think is protecting me is the pain that I need to understand. And the clearer I am that the fear is the problem, not what it fears, I'm going to say it again. The clearer it is to me that the fear is the problem, not what it points to, the more I'm going to be willing to stand up and look at that thing when it appears and let it do what it's going to do to me. And you'll always find the same thing. The only thing that happens when you let a fear that you're afraid of do what it's going to do to you is you see it didn't do anything to you. It can't. It can't. You say, well, because I can hear the thoughts. Well, what about, what if I lose this? And what if that happens over there? You've been doing that for 1,000 years. Do you not always have a rationale for a fear? Yes or no? Fear is irrational. Psychological fear is irrational.
I think this is the same Debbie. She popped on, Guy. So
Okay.
we'll let her.
Debbie can double dip.
Okay.
It's a
Do you
3D.
want to unmute yourself? There you go.
I think. Hi, Guy.
Hi, Debbie.
Okay, I feel the nut is cracking, okay? I
Good.
get everything what you just said. The rationale, if the action is inaction, like you said, how can you not take action? You're always taking an action, whether it's
Yes.
the decision not to act or react or whatever.
Okay, just one
Let's
second.
say-
Wait, just 1 second. The key here isn't in quotes that I'm not going to react or I'm not going to act. The key here is to see that there is something that I've always called myself that can't do anything other than react or try to act. That's what non-action is the awareness of the false actor. That's what non-action is. No mind is seeing the false mind, the false actor, as it runs through its iteration, seemingly to escape the box, when the very action of anything in the box is the perpetuity of the box. This is important to understand, Debbie. It isn't, I'm not going to gear myself up and I'm not going to react. I'm not going to make choices. That's not what I'm talking about. Because now you're still in the hands of something that is trying to rescue itself from something that it doesn't want. The task is to be aware of this. Watch the mind. You have new knowledge now. The new knowledge at least is the intimation that maybe in these moments that I don't want, that there may be some creative, powerful relationship that I'm invited to participate in, so that in the participation I exit the moment with a new level of understanding I didn't have before. But the only way I have that new level of understanding I didn't have before is through what we're calling non-action, through watching the actor, through watching the compulsion to react. In watching that, I gain new understanding, new insight into that consciousness, because light has come and is showing me its activity instead of me defining myself by its activity that, by the way, it calls the light.
Question?
Yeah?
Wait, you just said something. I lost my train. Okay, so you said you had that pain and and you say you play golf and the doctor said, well, playing the golf isn't going to heal whatever's going on in the back. Have you gotten through that?
Well, first, that was just today. But I can promise you I will get through that.
I mean, like I did something with the shoulder the other day, and I knew that if I kept working it out, it would heal itself, and I did that. But when it comes to my life and knowing that there's something, an inner force that's telling me to break out of that box, I say there's not enough time, or I make an excuse. And it's like, how do I become okay with feeling great about myself?
Well, that's the problem, you see. You're not, Debbie, you've been brainwashed, everybody has, to believe that life is only as good as I feel about myself. There couldn't be anything further from the truth. Who's the self that I feel good about? Well, it's the me that's...
Without all the restrictions of my crazy brain thoughts. The noise.
Listen to me. Don't try to feel good about yourself. Instead, watch something in you that tells you you shouldn't, or that you should feel this way. Just watch, Debbie. Be a watcher. Sit up someplace in your house, in your room, in the car, wherever you are, and watch how virtually every moment, and it is every moment, produces some kind of reaction. The moment that you are aware of is the result of a reaction you weren't aware of the moment before. And use whatever awareness you can give yourself, that you can lend yourself to. Give yourself to wanting to see, not give yourself to wanting to be, not giving yourself to not wanting to be. Give yourself to wanting to see everything you can see about Debbie in that moment. That's it. Don't do anything else. And what little energy is not spent now doing all of the old things will acquire and give you new understanding. Then the new understanding will give you a new wish. The new wish will take you deeper. You just have to go through it. On we go.
Okay, one more quick thing. One more quick thing. So how long do I wait to see?
Yes.
Like,
I get it. Listen, I get it. I get it. I get it.
like I feel it so much, like even right now, and I want to
Yes.
jump out of that box.
Yeah, I can feel
And
it.
it's like,
I feel you.
Maybe it's not
I
ready.
understand. When you see something beautiful, Debbie, in life,
Mhm.
do you think to yourself, how long do I have to watch this?
No,
Well, when you
no,
understand,
I just see it
That's-
beautiful.
that's right. Well, when you see that every moment that God gives you is an unseen beauty, that in everything that you don't want to see, there's something waiting for you to be given to understand, then you won't ask, how long do I have to be still? You'll understand the significance of being still is that it allows you to be in relationship with what is being revealed to Debbie about Debbie, so that she can begin to die to herself, so that she can begin to give herself up. Then when you see the beauty in every moment like that, especially in the moments you don't want, you'll be well on your way to answering all the questions that you've just asked me. Think about what I've said.
All right, Guy, we have Lori in the queue and 2 written questions left.
We will do Lori and then the 2 written questions, and we will call it a night.
Okay, here's Lori.
Lori. Lori.
Hi. I'm here.
Where have you
Minnesota.
been?
I know. I have, thank you for asking. I've been listening intermittently, and dealing with the harsh feelings that come up of the, who Lori, who I think I am.
Yes.
And I'm not an observer. I'm not a joiner. I'm trying to heal. My mind just goes back and forth when I know that if I speak, I know that pain is that door is gonna, even now, I was like, okay, I have something I can share. Oh, remember what happens when you share? Just that word you were talking about, that share word.
Yeah. All right, well, let's share and see what happens.
So like I'll try like everything that you spoke about, every thought when somebody comes up to speak. I feel like you've helped me so much, and I try to remember that I help people too through that. You know, it's
Yes.
but I remember the moments when I said I feel like a nobody, and you said that's the nobody. Like who feels like a nobody? And
Yes.
it's funny how so now I'm still dealing with, 4 years later, when I went from my oldest son and how am I going to get through that to seeing where he is without my help, really, like, without anything I physically could have, to now in a meeting where I'm dealing with what I believe is people around me who are affluent. Okay, my daughter is a basketball player, and this is her last year, and I've been, helping. And I'm not the kind of person who helps in sports because I don't know what I'm doing. But so I'm helping this whole team, and I'm trying to do it because I know my daughter feels empowered by me doing it. And she's just this incredible person. And all these people come from the sports world. And I know John knows what I'm talking about with his AAU stuff, but this is over the top people. And I'm literally watching my mind go, oh my God, this person has a full in-court in their basement. This person, they have all the support, all their family. My kid doesn't have it that. I can't give my kid this. I'm failing. I've already failed her. She's gonna, and then I sit there and I'm trying to do exactly, this is just one example, but I just sitting here trying to do exactly what you're saying, is to say, what is the no mind trying to show me about this? What is the
Lori, listen to me.
yeah.
It's at the root of everything that we spoke about tonight in one respect. I'll go into it more deeply in the next week or so.
Yeah.
It is an absolute nightmare to live from an unconscious nature that gives itself a sense of self by comparing what it doesn't have to what it should have. It's endless.
Yes, I recognized it tonight.
You cannot suffer over any given unwanted moment, no matter what its nature is, without identifying with some form of comparison that mind creates. It compares. It compares in order to create the conflict it then wants to try to save you from. That's what it does. And the solution to that is not to try to answer it or become one of those people who has or who is going to give or do. The answer is always to recognize that mind and that comparison process must be recognized not as my friend, not as something to let define me, but to see comparison puts me in a box. End of story. I'm not going in the box, but wait a minute, what about this? And look, they've got that. What kind of car is that? I don't have those new tennis shoes, or whatever the particular instant may be. And to watch the mind go through all of its iterations and recognize that you alone, I would add, have the opportunity to use every last bit of that interior conversation and its conflict to change the consciousness that's producing it. While those people, they don't have a chance because they don't have the understanding that's starting to grow in you. Use it, Lori. Use it, Lori. Use it, Lori. And I want to hear within a week or two about something you discovered when you decided, I'm not going to let that comparative mind put me in a box. I'm going to suffer the comparative mind instead of suffer for it. I'm going to suffer the comparative mind instead of suffer for it.
For it. Okay. Yeah, that's good. I like it.
Okay? Let me know.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
You bet. We'll just do one more written question and then we're going to quit.
Yeah, and it's funny, it is exactly what you were just talking about. Janice says, do we suffer the moment? How do we do that?
And I just described it.
Yeah.
I just described it. I hope that you understood that, Janice. Try to understand you're not suffering the moment. You're going to consciously suffering the part of you that wants to make something out of that moment so that you can be the one involved in it, taking from it or being taken from it. Good night. I'll see you all on Sunday.